Recording in progress.
Ready? No, I'm good. It is now 2:00 and I will call the meeting to order for our Office of Small Business Ad Hoc Committee. The first item, or rather second item on our agenda is the adoption of the agenda. Are there any additions, changes, or deletions?
Ms. Newton, can
That would be appropriate. Thank you. It says call to order, but it didn't say roll call. So I was following the script, if not the right order. Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Barron. Newton.
Present.
Pugh.
Here.
Mackey.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. And I will note that Gretchen Barron, who also serves on this committee, has mentioned that she is she's en route right now. She's traveling. So she's going to try to join us either virtually or in person shortly, but did want to acknowledge Ms. Barron. Then with that, the adoption of the agenda, changes, additions, deletions.
So moved, ma'am.
second?
We have a motion for approval that has been properly seconded. Madam Clerk, would you call the roll?
Newton.
Yes.
Pugh.
Yes.
Mackey.
Yes.
Motion approved.
Thank you. Now it is time for the election of the chair. I'll accept a motion.
Madam Chair, I'd like to make a motion, excuse me, for Derek Pugh.
Derek Pugh has been nominated. I will second that motion. There's no one else to make a nomination from the floor, but in case Mr. Pugh wants to do something special. Thank you. Then it's been moved and properly seconded to elect Derek Pugh as chair of this committee. Madam Clerk, will you call the roll?
Newton.
Yes.
Pugh.
Yes.
Mackey.
Yes.
Motion approved.
Thank you. With that, I now acknowledge Councilman Derek Pugh as chair of this committee, and I will yield control.
Thank you very much, ma'am. I would like to thank both of my colleagues for having faith in me to chair this committee. I'm looking forward to us working together and moving forward. Thanks a lot, ladies. So with that being said, let's look at item number 4 on the agenda, the minutes from October the 16th, 2018. This was for information. Can I get a motion for approval if there's not any changes that need to be made?
Move to approve.
Just a question for clarification. Did we actually need to approve these though? I mean, it was for information. I was not here, so I feel uncomfortable voting.
I feel uncomfortable just reading the minutes.
Okay.
But,
so can we just take that as information?
Thank you.
We'll take this as information and move to item number 5 on the agenda, which is the presentation from the OSBO office overview. Ms. Erica Wade, you are recognized, ma'am.
Thank you. Good afternoon, council members, administration. My name is Erica Wade. Can you hear me? Okay. My name is Erica Wade. I am the manager for the Office of Small Business Opportunity, and I will give an overview of the office, talk a little bit about the SLBE program, and also talk about the services that the office provides. So with that, we can go to the next slide about the history. So just a little bit about the history of the office. So under Ordinance 04913 HR, the Office of Small Business Opportunity and the SLBE/ESLBE, which is your Emergent Small Local Business Enterprise Programs, was created at Richland County. The programs were designed to target small and local businesses, and also the office was created to provide opportunities for small businesses to participate in county contracts. Next slide, please. So what is the mission of the office? So the mission of the office is to provide a race and gender neutral tool for the county to use in its efforts to ensure that the small and local businesses will have a reasonable and significant opportunity to participate in county contracts. Next slide, please. We want to talk about the goals for the office. Let's talk about advocate. So, advocacy. OSBO focuses heavily on advocacy. Our goal is centered around being at the table from the onset, serving as an ambassador for our SLBs. And one thing in speaking with our SLBs, we always ask, what do you want to benefit from the program? They always come back and say, opportunities. So with that being said, what our office did, we looked at the strategic plan of Richland County. We looked at the mission statement of Richland County, and it talked about receiving equitable portion of contracts coming out of Richland County. So us as a team, we decided to get together and figure out how can we support that mission. So what we did as a team, we created a strategic, we created our strategic partnerships. I lost my train. So with that being said, we created our internal infrastructure. And what we did, we went to all our departments and we asked them, what is it that you know about the department? How can we support that mission? So we educated them on our office, what it is that we do. One thing we also strongly encourage them to do is make sure they support our SLBEs when it comes to having contracts at Richland County. And through those meetings, a couple things came out of it. Now our offices, our departments, they're taking a proactive role in calling our office when it comes down to looking for businesses to provide products and services. When it comes to projects that's coming down the pipeline, we're actually at the table with some of those projects. So we're actually moving the table. Connections. Through one-on-one consultations strategic partnerships, networking events, trainings and workshops, even hosting matchmaking events with our SLBs and our departments, the office ensures that the businesses are connected to programs and resources needed to foster growth. Through our SLB certification program, OSBO is working diligently to ensure that businesses are certified so that they will be able to take advantage of contracting opportunities with SLB utilization goals set on them. This also helps our SLBs remain competitive, not just here in Richland County, but even if they go to the city or DOT, they're still competitive and competing for projects. Next slide, please. So what are some of the services that OSBO provides? Uh-oh, I think we skipped.
Back.
Okay. So what are some of the services that OSBO provides? So OSBO maintains a proactive leadership role with the services we provide. We are dedicated to ensuring that the business of access to resources such as funding opportunities, capacity building, business development, and trainings. The office advocates for the small businesses to ensure that they are not restricted from full participation in Richland County procurement opportunities. Also, I talked about the mission that we looked at, and I talked about how we met with our departments. And also, and I talked about what was the result from those meetings with our SLBEs now receiving contracts. And with that, with the SLBs receiving contracts, they're also now increasing their revenue. So which means they're able to sustain and be competitive. Next slide, please. What are some of the eligibility requirements for being an SLBE or an emergent SLBE? First of all, they must have a principal place of business in Richland County, or 25% of their employees must live in Richland County. They must be independently owned and operated, and they must be for-profit. We do not certify nonprofit businesses. The business owner must be actively involved in the day-to-day operations of the business. They cannot have more than 50 full-time employees, and they must have been in business for a year, and they must meet the size standard for the eligibility required set for the program. For our emergent SLBEs, they still must meet all the requirements as an SLBE, but they cannot have been in business more than 5 years. They cannot have more than 5 full-time employees, and their annual gross sales cannot average more than $1 million over the lifetime of the company. What are some of the benefits of being an SLBE? So our businesses will receive maximum exposure through our SLBE directory. So not only do we use the directory, the city uses it, DOT uses it. They will be eligible for projects with the SLBE utilization goals set to them. They're also eligible for SLBE-led. So we have a sheltered market project. As long as the project is not over $500,000 or more, they will be eligible to work on those projects. And they're also able to participate in our trainings and workshops and business development services, which in our trainings and workshops are free to the public also. And we also do a feature story on our certified SLBEs, and it's placed on our webpage. Next slide. So what are some of our certified categories? So we certify in the areas of construction, architecture, engineering, professional services, non-professional services, and wholesale services. Under ordinance number 01614 HR, Council adopted the size standard eligibility requirement, stating that over 3 years, the average annual gross revenue cannot exceed those totals that we have listed in the right column. So for example, if I was a construction company, I cannot make over 7 million over a 3-year average. You would be considered as being too large for the company. Too large for the program.
Sorry. Eric has a quick question. Can you state that ordinance again?
It is ordinance 016-14 HR. Next slide. So we're talking about our certified SLBEs. Today, we have 117 certified SLBEs on our directory. And as you can see from the graph, we've been able to retain and grow our certification numbers. This year, our office launched a certification campaign. So what we did, we're working with our business license department to strategically target businesses where we notice there's a gap in those industry categories that we talked about earlier. We've hosted trainings and workshops in various areas in various districts throughout the county to increase the visibility and awareness of the office. So to kind of break it down, in architecture, we have 8 businesses that are certified, 37 in construction, 10 in non-professional, 53 in professional, and 9 in wholesale. And if you look at the pie chart, our highest percentage of businesses certified are owned by our Black males. Next slide, please. As of today, we have $73,857,634 have been awarded to our SLBEs. And that list, you can see the different projects that our SLBs have worked on throughout the life of the program. And through our advocacy and goal setting, this is what helps to drive those numbers. Next slide, please. So our OSBO strategic community partners. OSBO partners with agencies throughout South Carolina. So we don't just work in a silo. OSBO has established a strategic peer-to-peer alliances with our strategic partners. And the reason for that is for us to be able to achieve good practices with our workshops, our collaborations. We've built relationships with nonprofits, government organizations, municipalities, state, federal, local agencies, all across South Carolina. And what we found with those collaborations, it allows OSBO to remain proactive and also stay informed. We are able to assess the needs of the business community and learn what programs are effective, which programs are not effective, help to fill the gaps that's needed through programming, and also reduce redundancy. Also through our strategic partnership, the office remains visible and also valuable to our business community in Richland County. And now we are actually considered as a resource for our businesses. So if they need business development resources, they can come to us. Business plan, anything that contains that's centered around growth and development, our office is that go-to office for Richland County for our small businesses. The next slide kind of shows some of our strategic partners that we work with. It kind of falls in. So just to move on, so we partner with SCDOT, the airport, the SBA, Richland 2, Commerce, just to name a few of some of the strategic partners that we work hand in hand, and we all support each other's efforts. The next slide, please. So earlier I talked about collaborations and being able to assess and address the gaps that might be out there for our small businesses. So one of the tools that we use to address those needs is through our Business Academy. So this year we hosted a number of workshops and trainings. Some of the workshops that we had, establishing business credit, understanding your financials, securing contracting opportunities. That was a three-day series, and Cash App Me. That was a really good one. So from those classes, and like I said, with us being able to assess what's going on when we had the grant, we realized that a lot of our small businesses, they were just not ready as far as receiving funding opportunities. So that's how we came up with some of the topics that we use based on what's going on in the business community. In September, we hosted our Engage Richland event, which was the in-person event. We had over 200 attendees that was at that event, and I felt it was a success. We had ACA Lori Thomas, who served as the moderator for our procurement panel. One of the good things that came out of the event, there was a lot of business-to-business collaborations, which resulted in joint ventures. One of our presenters actually got a speaking engagement from that. One of our financial institutions, they called back and said that they had a record number of accounts opened from attendees from the event. So they had to call us back and let us know about that. And also we had SE that was there. So we called it Opportunity Day. So the purpose of it, when you walked away from that event, you should have walked away with either a contract, a job, or we had the contracts, the jobs, and what was the last thing? Building the relationships. Thank you. Next slide, please. So we're going to talk about our OSBO community engagement. OSBO will continue to promote the growth and the growth of our small businesses in Richland County. Here are some statistics that shows just how effective small businesses or the impact that small businesses are having in South Carolina. So we read an article, and it said, and it's according to the U.S. Small Business Administration Advocacy, the 2021 business profile, it states that in South Carolina, there are almost 446,000 small businesses, which is 99.4% of all businesses. The small businesses in South Carolina employs over 837 employees, which is good, which represents 43% of the workforce in South Carolina. So almost half of the workforce employed in South Carolina is employed by what? Small businesses. Of the 446,000, 364 they have no employees, which means they can be a sole proprietor. 71,000, 1 to 19 employees, 10,000, 20 to 499 employees. So slide 3, not the slide 13, 14, mine is off. So on slide 14, it shows some of the businesses that we worked with directly that opened just in 2022 here in Richland County. OSBO has had some type of impact. Either we connected them with financial institutes where one of our businesses received pretty good funding to open their business. Also, one of the business here, we was able to help them find a space. We offered business development opportunities for them. So just a range of services we provided. So in turn, of course, they invited us to be there for their ribbon cutting ceremonies. So what are the next steps? I'm sorry, next slide, please. The next steps for OSBO. OSBO is working diligently to grow and diversify our vendor pool that can potentially foster more competitiveness. OSBO is exploring ways to expand our local area. We would like to implement our internship program, which we want to work with the colleges and universities in the area by pairing the graduating seniors with some of our SLBEs so that they can gain on-the-job experience. And this can potentially retain the talent here in Richland County. Staff has also been tasked to be a liaison for the disparity study, in which recommendations may arise that may require council's approval. Our staff. I want to take this opportunity to introduce you to my power team. To my left, we have Ms. Pamela Green, who is my assistant manager. And we also have Ms. Margaret Jones, who is our certification and compliance specialist. A certification and compliance specialist. And right now, OSBO is working to fill open positions that we have. Any questions?
Thank you, Ms. Erica. That was very informative. But before we move on with any questions, I'd just like to recognize my colleague, the Honorable Gretchen Barron, who just joined us. All right. So any questions from, yes, ma'am. Ms. Newton, you recognize?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a few quick questions. First, I couldn't hear what you said when you mentioned the number of open positions that you have. Could you repeat that, please?
But right now we have two open positions.
Thank you. And then 2 more quick questions. And I really appreciate the overview to your department. And I'm glad that we're having this community meeting. When was the office founded?
2014.
And then when Ms. Mackey had asked about an ordinance that you mentioned, you gave her a number, and I wasn't writing it down because I thought you were going to say a different ordinance number that was in our presentation. So which ordinance was that?
The first one we talked about was the creation, which is 04913 HR.
Okay.
And the second ordinance I mentioned was...
And I guess while she's looking that up, if someone could distribute that maybe to the whole committee, but at least to me, I got on our system online to look up the 04913 HR, and either I did it wrong, or let's just say I did it wrong. I couldn't pull that up. So I would like to also read those ordinances.
And the other one talks about the industry categories and the annual gross revenues, and that is ordinance number 016-14 HR.
Great. And then thank you. One more question. And then my last question is looking at all of the things that you've done and also understanding how complicated it was for everybody during the pandemic. I wonder what you would see as some of your biggest successes recently for the office.
Well, considering that with the pandemic, one thing we were able to do was still retain our SLBEs. We still carried on with our workshops and trainings. We actually we pivoted from there. Before we would do on-site site visits, we learned how that we can actually do it virtually. We still had an opportunity to still have one-on-one through Zoom with our SLBE, so those things never ended. But what we did, as a collaborative group, when I talked about our strategic partners, we actually got together because at that time, some of our partners, they had, like for the city, for example, they had their funding that came out. The county had funding that came out, and we realized that a lot of our businesses just wasn't ready. So we got together and we did workshops, we did trainings. We went back to the basics on just understanding your financials. And actually the businesses were very receptive. And like I said, our numbers never dropped. I felt that we did more during the pandemic, to be honest with you. So as far as having a barrier is concerned, I think we moved forward instead of moving backward with the program.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Ms. Mackey, you recognize?
Yeah. I had a question regarding the eligibility requirements for SLB and the LBE.
Emerging SLB?
Yes. Okay, so when it listed, I guess, the requirements, how are these requirements any different than maybe like City of Columbia or DOT or, maybe some of our neighboring municipalities?
Well, with SCDOT, they federal. So they have a DBE program. Our program is small and local. So that is one thing that would differ as far as the eligibility requirements. However, the way that the office is set up and the certification process, it almost mimics SCDOT. The only difference is that we don't certify DBE. We just focus on local and small. What was the other part of the question?
Well, if you hit on DOT, I guess City of Columbia or maybe a neighboring municipality, if they do offer it, how are our requirements different than what they offer?
With the City of Columbia, they actually look at our certification. They look at SCDOT certification. And if you're certified with them, because our process is so stringent to the point we go and do site visits, if you're certified on our list, they accept our certification as well as SCDOT's certification and the SMBCC certification. Yes. And we're race gender neutral, right? And they're race gender conscious. We're neutral. And we don't have the disparity study.
Who is they?
They as in the City of Columbia.
Got it. Okay.
Yes. And DOT. And SMBCC, yes.
Okay. And I guess looking at this, and I know this question I know is slightly outside of your office, but I'm going to ask to see if you've heard or received anything about it. For a small business, when they are looking to start, right, they may not necessarily come to your office. They may go to the business license office and get those things set up before they get to you. How has that process been for them as they come to you? Does that make sense what I'm saying? So is it an easy transition? Are your departments working together? Is it a smooth transition where they come in, can set up a business license easily, and then automatically can start learning about SLB?
So from the feedback that we've gotten, it seems the system seems to be very smooth. Sometimes we may have some businesses that may start with us, and we will send them to them. We get emails, so we work hand in hand with each other. So if something that the business license office may need from us, we're there to help. As a matter of fact, we had Zach to do one of our workshops, a lunch and learn, that talked about that process. That was just a few months ago. So we work hand in hand with each other as far as implementing those processes and making it smooth for our small businesses.
And I guess throughout this, have we polled anyone to say, business owners to say, is there anything we can do to improve? Is there any recommendations maybe that you've all seen of things that we could do to improve and make it better for them?
We'll make a note of that.
Okay.
And get back to you on that one.
Aaron, you recognize?
Thank you. And I do apologize for my tardiness today, but I also want to, just as a local business owner, I want to speak personally. I have been on both sides of this, participating with this program. And I can say I've been in business for 17 years, and I've seen this office really evolve into what it can be and then some. So I want to say thank you to Ms. Wade and her team, Mr. Brown. I think that the way that the office is going is definitely going to put some people or other organizations around, as we say, go give us a little respect. Give us a little respect on that, because I think it's definitely great. And the workshops that you guys put on, I saw more come out of the pandemic from this office than I've ever seen. And that's not a dig, that's a compliment. And I told, Ms. Wade this as well. So again, I really want to give y'all kudos, but I do have two things, and I just want to go on the record to say these things. It's not something that we've not had a conversation about. And that is for us to really look and be conscious about the businesses that we are attracting to be SLBs, and because it does appear that there's a target type of business that makes it on these lists. But I do think that maybe that's the goal. But I very seldom, I never got work from Richland County. Well, I'm kind of grateful now, but I did all the legwork, but there was never an opportunity for me to do business and even to be able to follow that certification out. So I would just like to say, if it's a way for us to expand, to really be really inclusive about who's on this list and how we can target them. And then the other thing that I think would be great is, as Ms. Mackey stated, when you have a new business, we don't necessarily have that, we have the business office services down there. They keep me straight regularly. But to have that document that says, this is how you start a business in Richland County, I think that would be really helpful. But I just want to thank you again.
All right. Thank you. I just want to say, echo the same sentiments as my colleagues. I think we saw a lot of great things come out of the office during the pandemic, which was very monumental because people didn't know which way to go during that time. I'm also excited to see that you guys are looking at the strategic plan that the council has worked so diligently and hard on to make sure that we have a roadmap for Richland County. And so I'm looking forward to all the great things that are going to go on with this office. And I'm definitely excited to chair this committee because I want to make sure that we move it forward vigorously. And so with that said, if you have anything else to say, ma'am, the floor is yours.
I just want to say thank you for the opportunity to give an overview of the office. And we're looking for you guys to continue to support us as we work on your strategic plan.
Yeah.
Support your strategic plan.
I'll just point out that some of the things that we'll be looking at, there are some information that's come out as a part of this process related to the ordinance and just different things that we have that are not all unified right now. So we want to make sure we go back, look at that information and understand what the council's intentions were. May also be appropriate to come back and ask the council, what are your intentions now? And just as the committee considers, just by way of example, and looking at the ordinance just online, it looks like the Office of Small Business is a part of, if you will, procurement. So, and one of the things that I've been trying to do is try to align resources together to maximize our efforts. So one of the things we talk about with operational excellence, which is part of our strategic plan, is making sure we prioritize and align resources. So if the Office of Small Business is kind of just out there floating, I don't want that. I want them to be connected so they can infuse themselves into the procurement process as they operate independent of the process to identify how to connect those small local minority businesses to the program. But then I saw some other information that I recently found out that, it looks like there have been maybe 1 or 2 different ordinance changes that may not have been updated. So these are the types of things that, as we go through this process, Mr. Chair, members of the committee, that I just want to make sure that I'm moving forward in a way that aligns what we want to accomplish as a county. And those are just some of the things you'll probably see come before you as we go through this process. So if there are any questions about that, just know we're looking at it. And we're trying to make sure that we meet what the council's expectations are as it relates to how we organize the organization.
Hey, thank you, Mr. Brown. Ms. Mackey, you recognize.
Thank you. And I guess, Ms. Brown, I'm gonna make a statement and you can tell me if there's an answer or if this is an ordinance thing or not. Because you mentioned the alignment with procurement, and it may be just my lack of full understanding of the ordinance and kind of the mission of OSBO, but I understand the procurement piece, but in my mind, I also looked at the office as even an economic development piece. As we recruit larger businesses, we have these small businesses that can maybe help be suppliers to some of those, or to kind of help these small businesses be able to maximize their growth. So even if they're starting out, at this certain amount, we can help them grow and become a larger business. Maybe they're not even a small business anymore, which is still great for us. So I guess I see procurement, but then I also look at them as these other arms. And I guess if they are not performing those arms, then who is?
And that's a good point. And I think what we're talking about is something that the council potentially did at a point in time when they were establishing and had a specific focus. But it's not, it doesn't have to be limited to that. But in the context of which it was written, that's how it was shaped. But that doesn't mean we have to just stick with that. So that's, again, another reason why I don't want to get off track. But in putting certain things in ordinance, you create certain restrictions on yourself that then have to go back through an entire process where we could just do a quick shift and say, we want to include these things as part of your overview and over your responsibilities. Whereas to now, as the administrator, at some point in time, we'll have to come back to you. We have to do 3 readings in a public hearing to either keep these things in the ordinance and update them, or remove them from the ordinance so that these types of things are not limited by the ordinance. So again, that's a larger conversation, but there will be many things like this that you will see. And this area right now is just one of them. So it is something that we're currently working through, and I'm sure this committee will see that again. So I just wanted you to be aware of that as you may have questions like the ones you just raised.
Thank you.
You recognize.
Thank you. Administrator, one of the things that they mentioned is that the office would be playing a role in the equity study. Just for my information, can you let me know where we stand with that process?
Yeah, and if it's okay, Ms. Newton, we're actually going to have Mr. Ladishkin come forward. I know that from a procurement standpoint, we submitted the information out to have the study to get folks to come in and say, we can do that for you. And so if you want to know specifically where that process is, I can have Mr. Ladishkin tell you what that looks like. But that is one of the things. In addition to that, you may have seen, we do have our diversity officer who is also, we're going to be looking to bring on, which all will tie back into how the county is trying to fundamentally include a level of, I think they use the word, maybe that's the word we're going to go to, consciousness in terms of our processes as it relates to folks having access and opportunity to do business with Richland County and in Richland County. I think Ms. Ladishkin is at the podium. I think I see her at my left peripheral.
You do, but just before that, so for context, what I think I hear you saying is that what we're doing and where we are is we're bringing on a vendor who's going to do that study, and that's what Ms. Ladishkin is going to address?
Yes, ma'am.
In addition to the potential hiring of a diversity officer?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
Ladishkin, you're recognized, ma'am.
Thank you, sir. Jennifer Ladishkin, Director of Procurement. So we did do an RFP for our diversity study, and we have ranked that and made a ranking memo to Mr. Brown, who signed off on that memo. And we are currently engaging them for phase 1 of the study. And we have just completed our contract negotiations, and we will be issuing a notice to proceed very shortly. And as Ms. Wade mentioned, she will be the contracting officer's representative for the county. So she'll be working closely with them throughout the study to kind of be the bridge between the county and the study and whatever they need from us for deliverables.
And two questions. One is if you have at this point an idea of what the timeline would be for that process. And second, I would love to just see the RFP. I don't need to see the responses to it, but I'd be curious to know what how we specified what the work was that we wanted completed.
Yes, absolutely. I can provide that to the committee, and I'll also provide the updated schedule for the study.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Ms. Liddy. More questions? All minds and hearts are clear. We're going to go to number 5 on the agenda. Do I hear a motion for adjournment?
Move to adjourn. Second.
Properly moved and seconded. Madam Clerk, could you call the vote, please?
Barron,
Yes.
Newton,
Yes.
Yes,
Mackey.
Yes.
Motion approved.
we are adjourned.